throwaway because, well, this is messy. I've been married for 6 years to a woman who, looking back, was probably the most delusional person I've ever met. At the time, I thought we were solid, good job, a kid on the way, the usual boring adulting stuff. But man, the cracks started showing around year 4. She turned bitchy, not the playful teasing kind, but the everything's your fault and I'm perfect kind. Little lies started popping up here and there, and I chalked it up to stress from work or the pregnancy hormones. She said she was fine when she clearly wasn't. I was blind, I guess. At first, it was stuff like I didn't get your text or I was stuck in traffic when I knew she wasn't. Then the late nights became more frequent girls' nights that were never really girls' nights. I should have paid attention sooner, but hindsight's a bitch. Anyway, this story is about how I found out the truth, the fallout, and what I learned. Spoiler, it's wild. So, about 6 months before everything blew up, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. One night, she said she was going out with friends, but I caught a glimpse of a message from some guy named Mark on her phone. It wasn't just a casual hey, either, the tone was way too familiar. She quickly locked her phone away whenever I was near, which was new. Before, we shared everything, passwords, schedules, the whole deal. But now? Secretive as hell. When I asked about Mark, she laughed it off, saying he was just a coworker and I was being paranoid. Thing is, I wasn't just paranoid. The bitchy attitude got worse, like she was pushing me away on purpose. If I asked where she was, she snapped back, "Why are you so controlling?" It was confusing because I didn't want to control her, I just wanted the truth. One weekend, I stayed late at work. When I came home, the house was empty, no note, nothing. Her car was gone too. I called her, and she said she was out with friends again but was vague on where or who. That was the first time I really felt like something was wrong beyond just mood swings. I started paying attention more, and every lie felt like a slap. I hated that I didn't trust her, but honestly, she was making it impossible not to. That's when the seed of doubt took root. Okay, so here's where the nightmare officially begins. One evening, I was doing some late-night cleaning while she was supposedly at a work event. I was tidying up our home office when her phone buzzed. She left it on the desk unlocked. Normally, I wouldn't even think twice about looking, but something inside me said, just check. I opened it. There it was. Messages between her and Mark, but not just flirty stuff. They were planning secret meetups, talking about how exciting it was to be sneaking around, and how he couldn't wait to see her again. There were photos she had sent him, some intimate, some just candid selfies that she never shared with me. My heart dropped. I reread a few messages, unable to believe this was happening. But here's the kicker, she had the nerve to call me while I was looking. I scrambled to close the phone, but I think she saw my face because when I answered, she was calm, maybe even smug. That night, I lay awake, going through every moment of our marriage, every lie stacking up like a damn mountain. I couldn't eat, sleep, or think straight. I was drowning in shock, betrayal, and confusion. So, the next day I decided I couldn't sit on this anymore. I waited until she got home. She was acting all casual, like nothing was wrong, and just blurted it out, "Who the hell is Mark, and why are you messaging him like that?" She froze for a second, then her face twisted into this mix of anger and disbelief. "You went through my phone? That's a huge violation of trust," she spat. Like I was the bad guy for discovering her betrayal. I showed her the messages. She looked at them, then burst out with this ridiculous story about how it was just harmless flirting, how Mark was lonely, and that she was only humoring him because he was a mess. She tried to paint herself as the victim, saying I was paranoid and controlling for even questioning her. I lost it. "You lied to me. Lied every day for months. How do you expect me to just believe that crap?" She didn't apologize. Instead, she flipped it around, said I was the one pushing her away with my jealousy, that she needed space, and if I loved her, I'd back off. Honestly, it was like talking to a stranger who was a master at manipulation. I felt enraged, crushed, and completely blindsided. After that confrontation, I was a mess. Shock quickly turned to anger, the kind that burns your chest and keeps you awake at night. I kept replaying every conversation, every moment, wondering how I missed it all. How could she be so cold, so damn calculated? But anger faded into a deep, sinking sadness. The kind that makes you question yourself and everything you thought you knew about love and trust. I felt stupid for believing in her, for trusting her when she was clearly lying. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, stomach twisting, feeling utterly alone even though we lived under the same roof. It wasn't just about the affair, it was the betrayal, the lies, the way she treated me like I was some fool who didn't deserve the truth. At some point, I stopped trying to get answers from her because her words meant nothing. It was like she was living in her own delusional world where she was justified, and I was the problem. I felt lost. Like my whole life was built on a lie, and I had no clue where to go from here. After days of torment, I reached a point where I knew I had to make a decision. Stay and try to fix this mess? Or cut my losses and move on? Neither option felt good, but staying felt like swallowing poison. I started talking to close friends, trying to get their perspective. Some told me to walk away immediately, that no marriage survived this level of betrayal without years of hell. Others said couples therapy might be worth a shot, especially with a kid involved. The problem was her attitude. She never admitted wrongdoing, not really. It was always my fault for not trusting or being controlling. Trying to work on the marriage with her felt like banging my head against a wall. She was delusional about her actions, convinced she was justified, and that I should just get over it. I spent nights debating, do I fight for someone who won't fight for me? Or do I accept that this was the end? It was the hardest choice I've ever faced. In the weeks after the confrontation, my emotions were all over the place. One minute I was furious, ready to throw in the towel and scream, I'm done. The next, I'd catch myself hoping for a sign that she'd change, that she'd admit she was wrong and we could somehow fix this. I'd think about our kid, how messy this would get for them if we split. That guilt was crushing. I kept telling myself, maybe she's just lost, confused, maybe this isn't the end. But then she'd snap at me for being too sensitive or insecure, and that hope would shatter. I felt isolated. Friends tried to be supportive, but nobody really gets what it's like to have your entire world flipped upside down by someone you trusted more than anyone. Sleep was rare. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, haunted by images of her lies and the thought of her with someone else. At times, I wondered if I was crazy for even staying in this limbo. But leaving felt like giving up on everything I'd worked for, my family, my life. This emotional roller coaster was brutal, and honestly, it felt endless. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. One afternoon, I was going through some old emails, yeah, I know, obsessive, but I stumbled across a thread between her and a friend. Turns out, she'd been spinning two totally different stories about the affair. To me, she said Mark was a fling, some momentary mistake. To her friend? She bragged about how she's got him wrapped around her finger and, the best part is, I'm still married, and he has no clue. I was floored. This wasn't just cheating, it was straight-up arrogance. The delusion wasn't just about believing she could get away with it, she enjoyed the deception. I confronted her again, expecting some kind of remorse or denial. Instead, she smiled, like I was the punchline of some joke. You really think I'm going to throw away my life for you? You're so predictable, she said. That line hit harder than anything before. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was cruelty. After that crushing conversation, something inside me snapped. I realized I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, this toxic dance where she called the shots and I was just a fool playing along. I started quietly making plans, looking into divorce lawyers, gathering documents, figuring out what to do about the kid. It wasn't just about anger anymore, it was about protecting myself and what little dignity I had left. At the same time, I tried to keep things as normal as possible around the house. I didn't want to freak out my kid or cause a scene before I had a clear plan. But inside, every day felt like walking on a tightrope. I told myself this wasn't failure. It was survival. Staying with someone so delusional and cruel wasn't love, it was self-destruction. Even though the thought of starting over scared the hell out of me, I knew I had no choice. You know what really crushed me during all this? The little things that added up, the way she ignored me at dinner, the fake smiles in front of our kid, the way she'd snap at me for no reason. She was always bitchy, but now it felt like she was trying to punish me for catching her. Sometimes I'd find her scrolling on her phone, laughing at some private joke, like I didn't exist. There was this one time I found a receipt from a fancy hotel tucked inside her purse. She swore it was a business trip. I wanted to believe her so badly, but the doubt clawed at me. Every day was a battle between hope and heartbreak. I kept asking myself, how did the woman I married turn into this? Was any of it ever real? It all came to a head one night when she outright refused to come to bed. Instead, she stayed up texting and giggling on her phone. I asked her what was so funny, and she snapped, "Mind your own business." That was the last straw. I couldn't pretend anymore. I packed a bag, told her I was staying at a friend's place for a while. The look on her face was pure shock, like she wasn't expecting me to call her bluff. That night I finally allowed myself to feel everything, the rage, the hurt, the betrayal. I cried like I hadn't in years. It was humiliating but necessary. The next morning, I started drafting an email to a divorce lawyer. It felt like the end of a chapter one never wanted to write. Once I made the decision to leave, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my life again. I met with a divorce lawyer who walked me through the process. It was overwhelming but also empowering, knowing that I had options and a plan made the whole thing feel less terrifying. I also started setting boundaries with my wife. No more late-night texts, no more hiding what she was doing. She tried to guilt-trip me, but I stood firm. This was about my sanity, my future, and my kids' well-being. Slowly, I began to rebuild myself, reconnecting with friends, hitting the gym, and even starting therapy regularly. It was a long road, but I knew I needed to heal before I could truly move on. Looking back, I realize I was living with the most delusional person I've ever met, not just because of her affair, but because of how deeply she convinced herself she was right and I was the problem. I spent so long questioning myself, wondering if I was overreacting or being paranoid. But the truth hit me hard. Her lies, manipulation, and blatant disregard for my feelings showed exactly who she was. It's painful to admit, but sometimes love isn't enough. Trust is the foundation, and once it's shattered, rebuilding takes two willing people. She wasn't willing. I learned that no matter how much you want to fix things, you can't force someone to be honest or to change. If you're reading this and going through something like what I did, here's what I want you to know. First, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore those early signs, they're there for a reason. Second, don't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who clearly doesn't value you. It's hard, but sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Third, lean on your support system. Friends, family, therapy, whatever helps you heal, grab it. Lastly, remember that betrayal is not your fault. You didn't cause it, you didn't deserve it, and you're not broken because of it. It's been a painful journey, but I'm finally starting to see a future where I can be whole again. And honestly, that feels like the biggest victory. Thanks for reading, and if you have questions or just want to vent, I'm here. Alright, so I decided to confront Lisa the very next day. I wasn't going to let it fester anymore. I sat her down, phone in hand, and just blurted it out, "Who the hell is Mark? Why are you cheating on me?" She looked at me like I was crazy. Then she got that bitch's smirk I hated, the one that meant she already had her story lined up. Her first move? Denial. What are you talking about? That's just a coworker, we're nothing. I showed her the messages. Pictures. Plans to meet. She rolled her eyes, sighed like she was the victim here, and said, "You're so paranoid. You're always spying on me. You're the problem, not me." Then the lies started coming fast. "I never meant to hurt you, you're overreacting, and my personal favorite, you're imagining things because you don't trust me." I couldn't believe it. Not just the cheating, but how she twisted everything, making me the bad guy for catching her red-handed. Man, after that confrontation, my head was a mess. At first, I was just angry, like boiling rage that made my chest feel tight. How could she do this? How could she lie to me so easily? I kept replaying every moment, every bitchy comment, every weird vibe. But then the anger turned into this crushing sadness. I felt stupid. Like I'd been blind the whole time. The wife I thought I knew was a stranger. I started doubting everything about myself. Was I not enough? Was I too clingy? Too boring? I spent nights staring at the ceiling, heart aching, wondering if I was just fooling myself all along. The betrayal hit me in waves. Some moments I was numb, other times I'd burst into tears for no reason. I guess what hurt the most was that she didn't even seem sorry. It was like she didn't care about what she was destroying. After a few days of spiraling, I tried talking to Lisa again. I thought maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to fix this. I asked her if she wanted to work on the marriage, if she still loved me. She looked at me like I was pathetic and said, "Why would I stay with someone who can't even trust me? Maybe you're the one who needs to change." That hit me like a truck. She flipped everything around, like I was the problem for even questioning her. I realized then that she wasn't just cheating, she was emotionally checked out, if not totally done. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg her to stay. But instead, I just sat there, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt. After that, I stopped trying so hard. I mean, what was the point? I was pouring my heart out and getting nothing back but excuses and lies. One night, I just packed a bag and slept at a friend's place. The silence away from her bitchy comments and constant gaslighting was the first real peace I'd had in weeks. I started thinking, maybe I deserved better. Maybe I'd been so wrapped up in loving her that I ignored all the red flags, the lies, the attitude, the sneaking around. It was like waking up from a nightmare I didn't even realize I was in. So, just when I thought I had a handle on things, I found out something wild. Turns out Mark wasn't the only guy. Yeah, Lisa managed to juggle 2 affairs without me having a clue. I found out because Mark flipped out on her after seeing a text from the other guy, some dude named Kevin. Lisa accidentally left her phone open during one of her usual bitchy tirades, and I saw the messages. This time, I wasn't shocked, I was just exhausted. The betrayal wasn't just cheating anymore, it was like she was trying to destroy me piece by piece. And the worst part? She acted like none of it was a big deal. I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted Lisa again, this time with the proof of both affairs. Her reaction? Classic Lisa. She rolled her eyes, called me obsessed and crazy, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. Then, in a moment of pure bitchiness, she sneered, "Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have needed anyone else." That cut deeper than any betrayal. Not just the cheating, but her blatant disrespect. I realized then that she wasn't ever going to change or care about how I felt. After weeks of drowning in misery, something inside me shifted. I realized I had to start putting myself first. I wasn't going to let Lisa's betrayal define me. I reached out to a therapist, something I never thought I'd do, and started talking through the mess of emotions. It wasn't easy. Some days I still wanted to scream or cry until I couldn't anymore. But slowly, I began to rebuild. I started going to the gym again, hanging out with friends, and even picking up hobbies I'd abandoned. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was fighting for me. For a while, I kept my plans under wraps. I didn't want her to know I was serious about leaving. She thrived on control, and giving her that kind of power again wasn't happening. But living in the same house with her became unbearable. She'd throw passive-aggressive comments, fake sweetness one moment, then icy silence the next. It was exhausting. At times, I caught myself reminiscing about the good parts, before the lies, before the cheating. But those memories felt like distant echoes, shadows of a life that wasn't real. I started going to therapy on my own. I needed help to process everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the anger. It was the first thing that helped me find some clarity. The biggest challenge? Trying to hold it together for my kid, who had no idea what was really going on.